All right, geometry folks, this is 3.2 talking about congruent triangles. What you need to be able to do is look at congruent triangles, make sure that they are congruent and their corresponding parts, and use these ideas to solve for missing parts. So, congruent triangles. Here we have three hearts, but they're all flipped around in different ways, but they are still the same shape and the same size. They are congruent. That is what we call two geometric figures who have the same shape and the same size. So, if you take a look, these two triangles are congruent. All right, now, please notice, they are actually color-coded for you. A and H, B and J, and C and K. So, what that means is that the corresponding angles are congruent to each other. That means A is congruent to H, B is congruent to J, and C is congruent to K. That also means that the corresponding sides match up, okay? So AB, segment AB, is going to be congruent to segment HJ. But now, please notice, I went AB, HJ, because A and B correspond, B and J correspond. All right, so that's not a coincidence. I put that in the correct order. That way I know what I'm talking about. So A and B, H and J. I've also got BC and JK. Then lastly, I've got AC, and that's going to be HK. Please notice how my points always match up, okay? A corresponds to H up here, so A corresponds to H every time I use it down here. B corresponds to J, so that matches up. C to K, that matches up. A congruent statement. It's basically saying the entire triangle is congruent to another whole triangle. So I say triangle ABC, and that's my official signature, that's my official symbol for triangle. Triangle ABC, and this is where it's important. ABC has to match up H, J, K. All right? A matches up to H, B matches up to J, C matches up to K. That's the way it has to be, so you know what you're talking about. So here we've got two four-sided figures. Looks like they're probably trapezoids. So we need to look at what matches up with what. So if I'm looking at angles, I can say angle A matches up with angle W. I know that because look, both of those have got one little line telling me that they're congruent to each other. I've also got angle B congruent to angle X. I know that because they have two lines matching up together. I also know that C matches up to Y because they've each got three lines. So last but not least, D is going to be congruent to Z. I know that because they have the same number and same style of marks. All right, so for sides, I have to look at what matches up. So I've got AB, that has two bars on it, so that's going to be WX. So I've got AB is going to match up with WX. All right, I've got BC, B matches up with X, C matches up with Y, so that's segment HY. I've got CD, C matches up with Y, D matches up with Z, so that works. And I've got AD, my last side. AD is going to match up with WZ. So each point corresponds, is in the same spot when I write it. So what I can say is quadrilateral ABCD is going to be equal to quadrilateral WXYZ. All right, so that's the important point, making sure that your points are written correctly and in the right order. So here, ABC matches up with DFE. So A matches up with D, okay? Angle A and angle D, they're congruent. Angle B and angle F are congruent. Angle C and angle E are congruent. Likewise for the sides. All right, so if I'm trying to figure out 8y minus 5, well, that's angle F. Angle F matches up to angle B. I know that from this congruent statement here. So now I'm going to say 8y minus 5 equals 99. So now it becomes an algebra problem. Add 5. 8y equals 104. So y is going to equal 13. So that's what y equals. X is that one. It matches up with EF. Okay? EF is this segment right here. Well, what one up at the top triangle matches up with EF? Well, E matches up with C, F matches up with B. So EF better match up with CB, which is this segment right here. So what I need to say is 8y minus 5, sorry, wrong one, 2y plus x is going to equal 2y plus x equals 38.4. Now we know what y is. It's 2 times 13. So that's going to be 26. So a little subtraction. 12.4. So it's all about what matches up where. You've got to be very, very detailed about this. All right. You cannot shortchange yourself. All right. Now look, RSV, TVS. So now these two sides match up, but not in the way you think. Okay. So if you notice, R and T match up. S and V match up, but then V and S match up. So here's what that means. R and T are corresponding. Now here's what it means next one. So you see how you have S and V? That means this angle S matches up to this angle V. So that means since this one's 90, this one's also 90. And lastly, I've got this angle V matching up to that angle S. So that makes that 78 degrees. All right, so that's kind of what we're looking for. So now if I want to figure out X, well, X is this angle right here. Well, I need to do a little bit of subtraction because every triangle's got to add up to 180 degrees. Minus 90 minus 78. So that's 90 minus 78, so that's going to be 12. So that means that's going to be 12 degrees. That's how big X is. All right, that's why that you need to be careful when they share a side because you got to make sure that the lines match up. So 2y minus 1, let's change colors. 2y minus 1 is going to be 24. All right, don't get caught up. A lot of kids will try telling me it's 24 and a half. That's not true. Look, it's RS here matches up with TV over here. That's this line right here. That's this segment right there. So y is going to equal 12.5. So now, third angle theorem, that kind of what leads into it here. If two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of a second triangle, then the third angles of the triangles are congruent. So here's what that's saying in a fancy way. A triangle's got to add up to 180. All triangles have to add up to 180. Well, here's all it's saying. If two of the angles are congruent and all triangles have to add up to 180, then the third triangle has got to be congruent. That's what that theorem says. So that's kind of the way we use that. So the way that happens here is I just got to say 2x equals 80, so x is going to equal 40. Over here for number 5, 65 is this angle that matches up to z. Okay, so I can say L matches up to angle z. Then I can also say angle M matches up to angle y. Then I can finally say angle N, I'll write that over here, angle N is congruent to angle X. So if I need to figure out the value of x, I need to do a little work here because x matches up to n. Okay, I know that x, the angle x is 4x, but I don't know how big angle n is. So I've got to do a little subtraction again. So 180 minus 65 minus 51. So 180 minus 65 is going to be 115 minus 51 is going to be 64. So this angle is going to be 64 degrees. So x is going to be 16. X is going to be 16 there. That's all I got. Come talk to me with questions. Your quiz is going to be coming sooner than you think, so be ready for it.